I'm now joined by Ms. Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us. I want to first understand from you, what are Ms. Hasina's options now? She's in India, reportedly looking to stay here temporarily or on a permanent basis. There is no clarity on that coming in as of now. She's also looking at the UK, Finland, Belgium and UAE. How do you look at the situation unfolding right now for Ms. Hasina, and what are her options?
Well, I think that there's news coming in that both the UK and the US have turned down the possibility of her staying on there. They've probably even revoked her visa for the US. And in the UK, they are saying that the question of giving refugee status does not arise. And if she wants to come on a visit visa, that's possible. But even now, the visit visa seems to be a little bit of a question mark. And no doubt it will be pressure from the US, which will be, causing the UK government also to relook at this issue. Now, I think first and foremost that it would depend on what Sheikh Hasina herself wants. And if she would like to stay on in India for a little while and she would convey that request, I'm sure the government would look at that. They would look at it carefully. So I think that this is the first thing that we have to look at. And secondly, I think, we have to really also look at how this thing happened. Why did it happen and how did it happen? Who are the forces behind it? It's not a student protest at all. Nobody can say that it's students who have, driven Sheikh Hasina away from Bangladesh, because the students' reform movement and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina were on the same page. They both agreed that the the quota system needs to be reformed. And in fact, in 2018, Sheikh Hasina had abolished the students' quota, the special quota for children of freedom fighters. So I think that, we have to recognize what has happened inside Bangladesh and recognize who were the forces behind it. And then we will know what to do next. It's very important even for India to deal with the new incoming Bangladesh government. We have to really recognize what it is all about.
Right, ma'am, you're making a very, very important point. And I was going to ask you that question about the protest, not just being about student quotas, as has also been said by many other geopolitical experts as well. But Ms. Hasina has also pointed this out earlier this year towards the involvement of a foreign hand, and that there was a plot to overthrow her government probably 6 months back. Are you also alluding to that? And can you expand a bit more on that? And how could that have happened and played out?
No, I am saying that all over the world, whenever there's students' protests, if there's nobody behind the students' protest, it fritters away. The students talk to the government, they get their demand, they don't get some demand, it goes. But the moment you have a force coming behind students' protest, then it morphs into something else. Now, in this case, also in this student protest, it was totally peaceful and non-violent. Till the 15th of July, it was completely peaceful and non-violent. Prime Minister Hasina, she came to India, she went to China, there was absolutely no problem of any kind. But then when the Chhatra League and the Islami Chhatra Shibir and the BNP came into it, the complete violence, they took over. The Chhatra Shibir seemed to have taken over the whole aspect, and the Chhatra Shibir has dominated the whole aspect. And if you see what happened after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka yesterday, then the first step of these protesters, I won't even call them students, they were bringing down the statues of Sheikh Mujib. And they burnt his house where he lived and where he was assassinated, and they ransacked her house, the Prime Minister's official residence in Dhaka. So I think these show that these were not really students, but students would not, they all revere Sheikh Mujib, whatever they may think of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, but they revere Sheikh Mujib. So now I think we have to see something that happened within the army. I think there is an embedded, even in 2012, if you look at the history, even at that time, there was a similar coup attempt against Sheikh Hasina from an embedded pro-Jamaat wing within the army. That is one possibility, but acting with some maybe foreign agencies, you have the fact that the West is insisting on Professor Mohammed Yunus becoming the chief of the interim government, then that does say a lot about And will that happen? We don't know, because I think the Jamaat-e-Islami themselves would want to also have that post of head of the interim government. So there are a lot of forces at play. There's a lot of uncertainty, lot of situation outside Dhaka is not clear at all, because the information coming in about attacks on Hindu minorities, about people being killed, intellectuals being killed. So all this shows that the situation has not stabilized, and we have to watch it very carefully.
Right, ma'am. And now that you mention of Professor Yunus, he's of course expected to play a crucial role in the interim government, but he's quite critical of India. We were just playing out a soundbite of him giving an exclusive to Times Now. How do you really see his role being central in the new government play out politically for India? There are concerns that that with Hasina gone, there could be also a return to BNP or some hardliner other Islamist parties.
Well, certainly the BNP is also trying to get into the interim government. We do know that in the first meeting yesterday, they have decided to, release Begum Khalda Zia from. She was under house arrest, not in jail or anything, but now even that has been given up. But it is her son who has been staying in London for the last 15 years because he preferred to go and live abroad rather than face the cases that were against him because of Chittagong arms and so many other issues. So he wants to come back, but there is no decision on that, whether the Jamaat-e-Islami would want him to come back. That's a big question, because then there would be a clash. In 2003, 2006, the BNP was ruling the government with Begum Khalida Zia was prime minister, but Jamaat-e-Islami was an active part of the government. There were ministerial posts for the Jamaat-e-Islami. Now it seems to be that the Jamaat-e-Islami has the upper hand. And will they want to get Tariq Rahman back? And is there going to be some kind of internal struggles on this point? Now, about Dr. Mohammed Yunus, we also know that in 2007 and 8, when there was an army-backed caretaker government in Bangladesh for the first time at that time, and there was a -2 formula: do away with Sheikh Hasina, do away with Khalda Zia, etc. The West was very keen for Dr. Mohammed Yunus to become the head of the interim government and then later on the prime minister. And in fact, he announced his entry into politics. He set up a political party.
And ma'am, that perhaps is really flagging off some concerns, but there are other concerns as well that have been raised by India on the attack on minorities that has even been reported by Daily Star Bangladesh. We're also seeing images on social media as well, Hindu houses being attacked, widespread loot and plunder. What is the message being sent out by the dispensation there, and how is it being allowed to happen?
Well, the message, I think, is very similar to the one that was being sent out by the government when I was there as High Commissioner. And it is that they are not going to give any, the initial message, let's see how it works out eventually. They're not going to give any care or concern for India's security red lines. And for India's concerns about, the status of minorities and the way the attack on them. Of course, I must say that the army chief has put out a notice saying that any Hindu or other minority family that's in distress, given a telephone number, you can call and we'll help you and so on. But on the ground, it doesn't really help. There's never any time to make any telephone call and get a response, So I think that India's security interests are going to be a great matter of concern. Things like the Northeast insurgent groups, are they going to be allowed to go back into Bangladesh? Since 2009, they have not at all, or even since 2007, because the previous army-backed caretaker government also had a concern about India's security interests. They had started looking at it very positively.
Absolutely.
And now it's not, if that's going to go back, then you have a situation of Ulfa, which is in Myanmar, and is it going to come back from where they're hiding in China and in the north of Myanmar and come back here? It's a very difficult situation that we are going to have to tackle. But I think that the relationship with the army and the relationship with the interim government is going to be the highest priority for India.
Right, ma'am. Definitely a crucial, a very, very troubling security situation playing out as far as Bangladesh is concerned. And India, of course, shares that over 4,000 kilometers of border with the country. But Nobel laureate Mohammed Yunus had said in an interview to Times Now, and I brought this up earlier on the show as well, he shifted the blame for the current situation on Sheikh Hasina's handling of her opponents. He even suggested that people are angry at India for supporting a person who allegedly destroyed their lives. But where do you really see India and Bangladesh Bangladesh relations heading with such outspoken statements coming in from Dhaka, which has been a friend for decades of India?
I must tell you that in the last, in fact, one of the main weapons that the Jamaat-e-Islami and other anti-Indian forces in Bangladesh have been using for the last many years, since Sheikh Hasina is being in power, but intensified now in the last 6 months enormously, is to run this subterranean anti-Indian campaign. They blame India for everything. I have seen WhatsApp, even during the present student reform movement and the Jamaat-e-Islami taking it over. I've seen WhatsApps where they're showing policemen chasing, protesters, and then suddenly it is morphed, and they're showing that the policemen are speaking Hindi, and they're saying, see, they are from India. And they have come. The RNAW has done this. So there's a huge campaign, a huge anti-Indian campaign. And you see many elements of that which are now coming out of the subterranean region where they were so far, but coming out, coming to the top, coming in the open. And you have, Mohammed Yunus saying he's anti-India because India supported Sheikh Hasina. I mean, she's an elected
leader. And definitely, ma'am, that is concerning to the Indian dispensation as well. But we'll have to see how the situation really plays out. And we do hope that both sides are able to maintain normalcy in relations. But, ma'am, some voices within the country, within India, are using these developments in Bangladesh to target opposition leaders here. They're suggesting that the situation in Bangladesh is a result of Western intervention and alleging that a section of political leaders in India desire Western support. Now, do you think this is a valid concern or simply an opportunity use of a deeply troubling situation for domestic political purposes?
A section of India desiring Western support. Well, in Bangladesh or in India, I mean, this is an amazing situation because, yes, we have seen some leaders speaking abroad, outside India, which is absolutely unusual because we know that previously, whether it was Prime Minister Indira Gandhi or others, any leader who went abroad and was asked questions about India said, I will not talk about internal Indian politics on foreign soil. This was a very, very clear bipartisan agreement followed by all political parties in India. But in recent years, this bipartisan agreement seems to have fallen apart. And we have seen instances of political leaders going to Western countries, whether talking to students or others. And these are public interventions that we know about. We do not know what is happening in the private interventions. And, talking about this, that, the same kind of situation that Dr. Mohammed is talking about, the democracy and so on, all kind of issues. And certainly we in India, the people of India don't accept it because I've seen that today when this news is coming out about Bangladesh, that there's Western intervention and people in India are rejecting it and they are expressing their anguish at this kind of Western and other intervention, whether it is Pakistan or China and so on.
Okay. Ma'am, let me ask you one final question before we let you go. How do you really see India's response to Ms. Hasina? Minister S.J. Shankar's statement in Parliament today, a rather measured statement. He said that India aided Ms. Hasina at a very short notice. He also spoke about minorities, also stating that India is watching closely situation unfold in Bangladesh. But the big question is, can India afford to have her here permanently or for any longer with respect to the new government, especially how they're looking at India doesn't really seem to be a very friendly dispensation?
Look, I think that on this issue, we should not be too much concerned because you cannot develop your relationship with Bangladesh by looking over the shoulder and saying that, we must do this to please them, we must do that to please them. I do not think that's the basis for any kind of a long-lasting relationship. If we feel that certain things, if Sheikh Hasina makes a request and the government feels that it is in our own interest, in the own interest of friendship that we have had for many years and decades with Sheikh Hasina, we must realize that when her father was assassinated in 1975, she was in India for many years because she had nowhere else to go. So we looked after her. She has very fond memories of her stay here. So similarly now, if any kind of situation arises and she expresses any interest, then the government will look at it positively. And I don't think that it will impact any kind of, relationship in the long term because other governments also realize. I mean, we do know, for example, that, Tariq Rahman has been sitting in the UK for 15 years. He was given refuge there and he's living there in the UK 15 years. But does that affect Sheikh Hasina's relation with the UK? I don't, they've been having their own relationship.
Absolutely, ma'am, and especially if the request really came in from the other side, there is limited that India can do. After all, like you said, that it is only doing its duty in the interest of friendship that India has had with Bangladesh, with Ms. Hasina for past many decades. On that note, thank you very much for sharing your perspectives on the situation unfolding in Bangladesh and what does it really mean for both the countries.